I will call this meeting of the Westwood Finance and Warrant Commission to order, and I'll grant permission to the Westwood Media Center to record the meeting. Is there anyone else that wishes to record the meeting? No? And we can do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
To the
to the
flag
flag
of
of
the
the
United
United
States
States
of
of
America,
America,
and to the
the
republic
republic
for which it
which
it
stands,
stands
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
liberty
and
and
justice.
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all.
And then Allison, I know you have to do roll call.
Okay. If anyone is still an attendee and hasn't been brought in as a panelist who is on the FinCom, can you please raise your hand? I think I have one or two who are possibly there. Oh,
There's George.
sorry, that's just George. I'm coming, George. Um, okay.
Just George. I like it. Okay, I see how it is.
No comment.
Okay. Bill Bruce,
Here.
Mike Gay,
Here.
Alex Yale,
Here.
Angela Hughes. Again, if you haven't been brought over as an attendee, just raise your hand and I'll slide you over. After Angela is Chris Marks,
Here.
Chris Pareda,
Here.
Christine Coughlin, George Laham,
Here.
Margaret Driscoll,
Here.
Mike Powers,
Here.
Paul Bamford, okay. Paul McLaughlin.
Here.
Paul is in the attendees.
She's on too. Oh, there's Paul Bamford. Thank you. I knew he was there. Okay. Paul Bamford is here. Ryan Sturma. I don't think I've seen just yet. Okay. Seth Fredrickson.
Here.
Oh, you made it. And Susan Flanagan Cahill.
Here.
Okay.
All right, we're good. Is that everyone?
Everyone for now. If people
Yeah.
join, we won't announce them, but they'll be added.
Yeah.
Yep. There's Paul. Okay.
Okay.
So just what's going on today, because there's been a whole bunch of different agendas and meeting invites because of the switch around to Zoom and stuff. The citizens petition, she will be at the next meeting on March 10th. She got stuck due to airport closures. We will in a minute have the planning board present and discuss their articles. And then after that, we will get an update from Connor, Molly, and Stephanie on the select board articles, as well as financials and the updates there around the budget. Again, those updates will just be high level updates. We can ask more detailed questions on budget and stuff in our next meeting. And then so our next meeting will be focused on a more detailed discussion. So I think you saw Allison sent a note out about trying to get your questions in by March 1st around, any part of the budget, whether it's schools or anything else. Get your questions into her and I. We're going to compile them, we'll section them out, and then we'll get them out so that the department heads can be prepared for the discussion on March 10th. And if you have any questions, just let us know. And then we'll talk a little bit more later on. I don't want to use the time now about the whole write-up process and the articles and stuff. We'll cover that later on during other business. So with that,
Hey, real quick, Bill, I just wanted to either you can put Jim O'Sullivan in as part of the panel, or I'll read his question. If the citizens petition is not available until March 10th, should my comments be presented the same day?
I think that's probably up to Jim, right? He could come the
Yeah.
same day. Sorry, Jim, for the last minute change on that.
Yeah.
If you can attend the 10th, I would say the 10th is fine. If
Yeah.
not, we can certainly have you to give comment later during the public part. You just let us know.
And then Bill, from a vice chair perspective, I just want to make sure that, again, for the members of FinCom, those questions are really important. We don't have subcommittees this year, so we need everybody to lean in and kind of look at all of the elements of the budget and get those questions in. It's a little bit different, again, based on the open meeting law. We decided to not have subcommittees that meet with the different department heads. And so, again, that little bit of a change, and to the new members, this is the normal. But for members that have been on for multiple years, this is going to require everyone looking at all of the different articles that come before us.
Excuse me, Mike, when will we get copies of like the school budget and the municipal budget and all that, those binders that we can look at and actually derive our questions from?
Allison, you're this way on my screen, so
Hi, George. You can pick up a copy of either binder at Town Hall or they are on the OneDrive.
I'll go to town hall. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Allison has organized everything really well on the OneDrive, where you can see stuff by meeting, by year. So the prior warrant books and stuff, everything's up there, kind of organized on the OneDrive. All right. So with that, Allison, do you want to pull the planning board, admit the planning board in to the meeting, so that Ellen's going to have to open up their meeting, and then they can go into that discussion.
Good evening.
Hey there.
Hi, Ellen.
Ellen, you might have a few more planning board members. Just when you do roll call, I can bring them in too.
Yeah, I think I need to see who's here to make sure we have a quorum. So let me just look at the participants. I can
see
tell you,
Phil Giordano.
yeah, we need Phil, Maureen. It just says Maureen, but I believe that's Maureen White. Mike Derderian. I'm just looking to see if we have anyone else. Oh, and Tim Ladina. I think we have everybody. Fabulous.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome, Planning Board. All right, so I will open today as our February 24th, 2026 Planning Board meeting. It's a continuation of our public hearing on our proposed warrant articles for the May 2026 town meeting. I will take roll call. Maureen Collins-White.
Here.
Mike Derderian.
Here.
Phil Giordano.
I'm here.
Tim Haladina. Couldn't hear you, Tim.
Here. I'm sorry.
Thank
I'm having
you. No worries. We know you're here. Thank you. I'm Ellen Rawlings. I'm here. I also see we have Nora Loughnane, our Director of Community and Economic Development, and Elijah Romulus, our Town Planner, and Amanda Wolf, our Housing and Land Use Planner. All right, so thank you. So our meeting's officially open. We are back to talk in more detail about our proposed warrant articles for the Springtown meeting. I know we gave you kind of a high-level overview when we were here last. We've really fleshed out our language. We have come to consensus on where we want to move with these. We are looking for feedback, any comments, questions, suggestions. I will try and keep it brief with that. Oh, and I think, Bill, we had talked, I think the format we're going to go through is we'll go one article at a time.
And
We'll
let
present the
folks ask
article. Yeah, we'll take FinCom questions, then we'll take public comment on each article. That way folks are waiting for one particular thing. They can move on from there. With that, Elijah has put together a really great presentation. So he's going to present the articles, and all of us are here at your disposal for questions or clarification or whatever.
Awesome. Thanks, Elijah.
Yes, no problem. Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Does everyone see it?
Yeah.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Yes, so this is the warrant article review for the Finance and Warrant Commission by the Planning Board. And so we have a list of proposed articles. I will start with Article PB1, Battery Energy Storage Systems, otherwise known as BESS. The article stems from an act signed by Governor Healy, the 2024 Climate Act. Within those regulations were provisions to reform the state's siting and permitting process for clean energy infrastructure. The Commonwealth also required regulations and guidance to implement those reforms by March 1st of this year. Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources, DOER, is developing legislation and guidelines for solar photovoltaic systems and the BESS to serve as a resource. It was initially scheduled to file on February 13th. However, the state is still in the process of doing that. And so what we proposed was a scaled down version of the model bylaw, which we are encouraging the Finance Warrant Commission to look in favor, as well as, the town at large. This, in addition to the state law, aligns with an action step laid out in our climate action, resiliency, and sustainability plan. Section A.6.1, consider implementing microgrids. A Tufts team of graduate students did do an exploratory report on microgrids in Westwood, which is available online. And so we will kind of go through the actual language of it. This was these amendments are proposed as an initial step, and once the state finalizes their regulations, we would look to adjust it at a subsequent town meeting. We'll be looking to revise the section 2.0 definitions, which will actually define what the battery energy storage system is. They have a few different tiers as it relates to the energy generation, and so there's a tier 1, 250 kilowatt hours, tier 2, which is 250 kilowatt hours to 10 megawatt hours, tier 3, 10 megawatt hours to 100 megawatt hours, and then tier 4, which is the largest of the systems, 100 megawatt hours or more. Also defining the aggregate energy capacity total. The amount that can be stored in these batteries, defining what the battery is itself. And then there are two different types of systems that we're defining, one that is solar related and one that is non-solar. And alongside that, we have a principal use table that has been revised. This allows for the solar BESS facilities. As you can see, they are allowed in the throughout the town, and this coincides with the state regulations that call for less restrictive permitting for any type of solar project. And so this falls in line with the needs of the Commonwealth. However, that doesn't mean that there is no oversight by the town. This would still go through a comprehensive site plan, our environmental impact and design review, EIDR process. And so there are also accessory uses associated with the solar BESS systems. Again, they fall in line with the solar needs of the Commonwealth. And then there are also non-solar BESS facilities. and those are via a special permit of the planning board in all the commercial districts for tiers 1, 2, and 3, and a special permit for tier 4 in the industrial district. Once we look at the non-solar BESS, we do get a little more. We look at citing them a little more in depth. So we have the tier 1, which is allowed in any of the districts. Tier 2 is allowed only via a special permit of the planning board. Tier 3, a special permit of the planning board in the commercial districts, and then tier 4, a special permit in the industrial district. And with all these, we do have a note, note 13, which just reads that all solar energy systems and all BESS facilities must comply with any dimensional requirements in sections 5 and 5.2, including setback requirements. And then also we revised section 7.6, the solar design review and approval, which will integrate the BESS facilities. For the full text, you can always refer to the warrant articles for the specific language. And Madam Chair, this kind of concludes the first article.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, feedback from members of the FinCom?
Just raise your hands if you guys want to talk. I got Pam, then Margaret, and Chris. Pam, you're first. Or Paula, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, thanks. I want to know what kind of, when I didn't know much about these battery systems, but when I looked it up, I saw that there was, the downfalls might be a high risk of fire and toxins and sort of noise pollution. So I want to know, oh, sorry, I got a dog that doesn't like me to talk, but I want to know what kind of feedback we've gotten from the fire department on this and what kind of research you all have done.
Amanda, would you like to go first? I saw your hand go right.
Yeah, so there are pretty strict regulations on these already. I believe it's from the building code, where depending on the size of the system, the type of the battery, all of those details, there's certain things that have to be in place. So the BESS encompasses the fire safety components as well. So it may have an HVAC system to regulate temperature. It might have built-in, suppressants. It's not necessarily, the building commissioner described it well at one of the public hearings we had. It's not necessarily that they're a higher fire risk. It's that if there is a fire, it's harder to contain.
Right.
Because of the typical extinguishers don't work on them. So like, for example, with the 24M battery testing and research facility in Westwood, the fire department does specialized training on that facility in partnership with other towns, and I suspect they would handle any large scale facility the same way.
Yeah, just given, our fire department's a little bit taxed. So, just trying to think of those things, would hate to add extra work if it was a danger. So thank you.
Right. And just to elaborate just a little bit, because as Elijah alluded to, we are a right to solar state, so we're not allowed to have certain level. We can't say no to anything associated with a solar installation. So if it was a BESS associated with a solar installation, we couldn't say no to it outright. And then the non-solar ones, they're the kind of things like the smaller scale. The tier 1 would be like the Tesla battery backup that people put into their homes, either with or without solar. We didn't want to tell people they couldn't do that. But our goal for now really was to define what a battery energy storage system is. And that's why we came up with the tiers. And also, as we've done in the past with other types of structures and entities, we wanted to take control now and say, this is where we would like to see, particularly the larger ones, But more importantly, this is where we wouldn't like to see some of the larger ones. Because I keep using the Medway example. If you drive all the way out on 109 right before 495, there is a larger scale one right on 109, but it's in the middle of a neighborhood. There's houses all around it. So we kind of wanted to make sure we didn't leave the door open for that. Because I don't know how many people would be jazzed about having an installation like that in the middle of the neighborhood. So we we wanted to put it down on paper as to what we consider to be a BES and where they are allowed and where they're not, to your point, Paula.
I appreciate that. I just, it was the one thing that I saw that was a red flag. So I
Right.
wanted to make sure you're all thinking of it. Thank you.
Definitely. No, thank you. That we talked about the fire issue quite a bit too. So thank you.
Susan, you dropped your hand. Are you all set, or did you still have a
Yeah,
question?
sorry, I didn't mean to even have my hand up. I don't know what
Oh,
happened.
okay.
Sorry.
No problem. Chris, you're up.
So I take it from what Elijah said, that the state has not finalized its regulations under this law. But this proposal is taken from a model bylaw. Where did that model come from?
That also came from DOER, the Commonwealth of State.
Oh, okay. All right. So do you see any issue with going forward with this model bylaw and then the state turning around and doing something really dramatically different?
I don't see an issue. I think it's us, the town, being proactive and being able to at least have something on the books, and then we could later fine tune it once the state comes back with more guidelines.
Yeah, that's my concern. But I take it. I think since the state gave you the model bylaw, I think they're that the chances of that are adequately mitigated. Let me put it that way. My only other concern is about noise, and I know that some of these non-solar vests may be recharged using the commercial power grid. Some of the other ones might be recharged using generators, gas-powered generators. So I would urge the planning board to consider, I know we have noise regulations on the books right now, but those noise regulations, in my view, are kind of one-dimensional. They talk about the decibels only, and they don't look at the frequency of the noise, which over time is just as harmful as that even noise levels that are below what we specify, if they're of a certain frequency, can be still very annoying and very harmful. So I would urge the planning board to look at our noise regulations again, particularly in light of the possibility that some of these best non-solar BESS might be recharged using gasoline power generators, and the like, and then see if we can get some noise regulations that are more than just one dimensional. That's all.
Nora or Amanda, you both raised your hand.
Sure. I just wanted to just clarify two things that were raised. One having to do with the model bylaw. To be clear, this is not using the model bylaw. This is putting in restrictions, putting in the definitions from the model bylaw, and then putting in use restrictions for where the different types of facilities can go in Westwood. It's not taking the full extent of the model bylaw and putting it into Westwood's bylaw. We're waiting until next year to do that after the state has finalized the model. So we want to see the regulations first. So we're doing the minimum necessary just to protect the town by defining what the different tiers are and by saying where the different tiers can go, how they will be reviewed differently if they're solar BESS or non-solar BESS, and if they're a principal use solar or non-solar BESS or an accessory use. I just want to be clear, we are not yet recommending adoption of the model bylaw. We hope to get to that next year after it's finalized. And then as far as noise regulations, the planning board will review even the solar BESS, anything over a level 1, they will review under the current solar design review section of the bylaw, not EIDR, solar design review, and they will have the opportunity to impose conditions that require sound attenuation where that's appropriate.
Yeah, I would urge the planning board just to look at the noise regulations, not only in the context of BESS, but in all contexts, and just look at frequency as well as loudness.
I've added that to the list of planning board articles to take a look at for the next town meeting.
All right,
Thanks.
thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions from FinCom?
Hey, Bill, I'll just add one quick question, one quick comment. Like many of the things that the planning board tackles, I love that we're doing this proactively and we're defining where it can't go. To not do anything and just to kick this down the road opens us up to the potential of somebody coming in and then being able to put it where they want. So, well done, planning board.
Thank you.
And then we have, because we're going to do public comments after each one, as Ellen said. So we have one public question. So, Allison, can you allow Dan Bailey to speak?
Am I in?
You are in now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to, Dan Bailey, 29 Martingale Lane. I'm a land use and zoning attorney, have been for about 40 years. I am speaking as a resident of Westwood, not on behalf of any particular client, but in the interest of full disclosure, I want to say that I have represented very large scale solar battery storage projects, including the one in Medway. And just want to say a couple of things. First of all, to echo what Mr. Gay said, what the planning board is doing here is really good, being proactive. This is very much, those of us that are doing this stuff day to day can't really tell you what's going on with the state and the regulations. It's very much a moving target. So to try and get out in front of it is important. But I want to make a point that I think is important because I don't want people walking away from this thinking that the town can actually prevent large scale battery storage facilities throughout town. One of the changes in the law that Elijah mentioned earlier is to provide one-stop shopping for large BESS facilities in excess of 100 megawatts. Maybe it's 150 megawatts, but I think it's 100 megawatts. Those very large scale facilities can go to the state energy facility siting council for all of the permits that they need effective July 1st, 2026. Those are some of the regulations that we're waiting on. I personally have worked on any number of BESS facilities that did not comply in any respects with the zoning of the town that they're in. So there's not much we can do about that, but I just want people to understand that if a large battery storage facility provider would come into Westwood, there's state law that allows them to, much like the affordable housing, 40B, there's state law that allows them to go to the state for one-stop permitting. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Right. I think we can go on to the next one.
Yeah, actually, Bill, Dan's comments though kind of bring up a question though. I was under the impression that by, defining where we can't put things, that is us taking a proactive stance. And if what Dan just said is accurate, does that mean they could put something in next door to my house, regardless of what the planning board is saying? And so if that is the case, and I'll let Nora kind of reply to that, because I think that's the big thing. I was excited about that, but Dan just maybe deflated my balloon a little bit.
So what we've done is we've put zoning in place that says that you could not put a tier 4 facility anywhere in town. You could only put it in the industrial district and then with a special permit from the planning board. We do believe that the state law as currently written, although we're waiting for the regulations to fully define it, we believe that if the state chose to work with an applicant to site something somewhere in town, they may try to put it somewhere, but we believe by having this in our zoning, we would have the best chance for fighting that. And if it is within the industrial zone, we believe we would have the right to impose reasonable comments based on our zoning bylaw, that the state process would still be the one that's followed for approval, but we would have a procedure in place. So I think this is the best we can do under the state law, and we're waiting for those guidelines to see if we need to tweak anything.
Thanks, Nora.
Thanks. All right, next article.
All right. Let's see. So the next article is PB2, adult daycare. With this article, we are looking to specifically change section 4.3.3.15 that requires a special permit from the Board of Appeals. It is right now there's a cap on the adult daycare facilities at 20 adults. And so the crux of this article is to increase that cap to 30 adults. In comparison, there is no cap for child daycare facilities. If you look at the accessory use table, this would change the cap from 20 to 30. You would still need a Board of Appeals special permit, and it's specifically in the residential districts.
Elijah, could you just remind us where the daycare facilities are today in town, or where they can be located?
I believe we have one facility in town, and I do not have
Julia
that
Julia Ruth House on Canton Street.
Okay, there's one on Canton Street.
Yep.
And then Alex had a question too.
Yeah, I'm just curious how the planning board came across this need to raise the cap. Was this by request of the current facility in town, or was this some other means?
Yes. Nora, I saw your hand go up, but yes, I believe they approached us.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Sure.
Paul?
Yeah, you had mentioned that there's no cap on child daycare, but that's regulated by the state, right? So the state has a cap on that?
To my knowledge, they have a ratio of teachers, but I'm not sure on the cap.
Well, my question was more one of, even though we don't have a cap on it, does the state cap adult daycare?
Adult daycare is licensed by the state, and they would determine based on the size of the facility and the amenities available in the facility, how many customers could be allowed there. So we think that's the appropriate way for the size of the facility to be judged by the state licensing program. And this restriction, it was required a limit of 20 under our zoning. So the Julia Ruth House asked if we would consider raising that, and if they are able to get an increase under their license, they would not be restricted to 20. So we're trying to be as flexible as possible, but with the understanding that the state license would control.
Okay, so it's really two steps, Nora. Then we would have to approve that, and then they would have to get the approval from the state as well.
Yes, so currently they have a special permit from the zoning board, which limits them to 20 customers. So if they are interested in going above that, they could go as high as 30 by coming back to the zoning board, getting an approval from the zoning board, which would be tied to a license and would then be capped at 30 instead of 20. And then they'd have to go to the state, get their license approval. And only once they had both the zoning board special permit modification and a license that allowed them to have more customers could they take in more customers.
Okay.
Any other questions from the group? I don't see any public questions. Again, if you're public and you want to ask questions, just raise your hand and we'll get to you when it's time. So I think we can go on to the next one, Elijah.
All right. Article PB3 is for animal daycare, and related to that, the proposal looks to revise the definition of pet care facility to create two categories, one as by right without animal daycare in specified commercial districts, and the other as a special permit use with animal daycare in those districts. This would allow a pet care facility with animal daycare in a commercial district, but only if a special permit is granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals. Looking at the definition for pet care facility, it's there is a section that's added, unless such daycare is accessory to its primary services and a special permit has been issued. And a valid license permitting animal daycare is in effect. And as we go further into the proposal, looking at the principal use table, you can see that the current pet care facility we add without animal daycare, so that stays the same in terms of where it's allowed. It's allowed by right in the local business districts, highway business, and then a special permit through the Board of Appeals in the industrial districts. And then we add a pet care facility with animal daycare, and those are allowed in the commercial districts outside of the ARO district, and within those allowed districts, it's a special permit through the Board of Appeals.
Any questions from the group?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Was there more?
That's it.
Okay. I don't see any questions anywhere, so we can keep going.
The next article looks PB4. It looks to propose changes and alterations to definitions. It amends specific definitions, and then it also adds new ones. So for what it amends, it's looking at alterations, temporary structure, motor vehicle light service, and then as I'll show later, the amendment to motor vehicle light service then sparks the need to actually define accessory or any electrical vehicle charging station and facilities. And then from defining those electric vehicle facilities, it sparked a proposal to also revise the principal use and accessory use charts, as I will show the next few slides. So with the amended definitions at alterations, there is an addition to that definition as applied to a site. Any material change in materials, grading, landscaping, circulation, or other material factor determined by the building commissioner to result in an altered site. This definition, already applies to a building or structure, and so the proposal adds, the surrounding site on which said building or structure sits on. The temporary structure definition is amended to add including a pod or storage container, which is not associated with an ongoing construction project, operating under a valid building permit. This was brought to the attention of the board relating to pods that, or types of those storage containers that can sit on properties for extended periods of time. And then finally, the amendment to motor vehicle light service and not to include electrical vehicle charging facilities as separately defined, which is then defined in the new definitions. There is accessory electric vehicle charging station. So those are, the kind of charging stations that you might see are, to charge vehicles. And then there's electric vehicle charging facility. So it's facility specifically for charging stations, and it's not an accessory, but just that's its principal use. And then there is electric vehicle charging station. So a freestanding structure. So again, that's just the actual charging facility. It's a charging station itself. Like you usually see them to charge either one or two vehicles. And then there's also pay to charge. So the same type of charging structure to actually, there's paid versions as well. And so with those definitions, we also looked at revising the principal use and accessory use table for an electric vehicle charging facility. It is allowed in the highway business district. And then for accessory use charging stations, those are allowed in the various commercial districts. And I believe that concludes this section.
Elijah, I have then I'll let it go. You says a question on the temporary structure one, if you go back to that one. And the change in definition there around limiting to 12 months. How does that apply to storage containers that some of the schools have or that sports organizations have in town that sit on the school properties or other town field properties? Because there's storage containers sitting on those different locations. If this was modified, would those all need to be removed? Nora and Amanda, you're tied for that one, right at the same time.
So on
Always
school
defer to
prop-
Nora.
on school properties, they would be considered an allowed use. A school property is reviewed by the planning board as a limited environmental impact design review. So the rules are a little bit different. They could continue to have storage facilities, and anything that's in existence currently at a school property would continue to be in existence. In the future, if there are new sports storages or school related storages, any changes to a school facility, the planning board would require them to come for a limited environmental impact design review, whether or not this definition is changed. So what this definition is trying to do is make it clear to people, if you're bringing a pod into your home while you're renovating your home, that's
Yep.
covered under building permit and you're all set. You do not need a temporary structure permit from the building department. However, if you're bringing in a pod or storage container when you are not planning any, you don't have a permit for a construction project on the property, then you do need a temporary building permit from the building commissioner just for that pod. So it's just separating out the two different ways that people use pods. And the hope is that it will prevent pods from sitting on properties for multiple years, which we have had a couple of instances of homes where residents have placed pods on their driveway or in their front yard, and they are there indefinitely. Whereas if it's a temporary structure, if it's clearly defined as that, now you need a temporary structure permit, and that's only good for 6 months with an extension up to another 6 months. So there's a duration in sight.
Okay, that's helpful to understand. So they can have it, they have to go through a permit process for it. I follow. Thank you.
They do. And it would just be a permit with the building permit. So it's just an
Yep.
online form that they need to fill out, and they would get their approval. It's a very simple process.
Okay, thank you. Seth?
Yeah, for the alterations, it maybe depends on the definition of a site. That maybe was said and I missed it, but for any change in material, grading, landscaping, circulation, does that mean anybody that wants to add a bush or a garden or throw down some loam or the yard now needs a permit?
It does not. So these are defined terms as they're used elsewhere in the bylaw. So what this does is it says where the word alterations comes into the bylaw. For instance, in the section 7.2, which is our environmental impact design review, it already says that you need to go to the planning board for design review approval if you are an institutional use, a non-residential use like a commercial use or a multifamily residential use. So it does not apply to single and two family uses anywhere in town, which are not, they're not mandated under the bylaw to go for any approval for their alterations. So site alterations, the definition here is to be used where the bylaw uses the term alteration. So it picks up in the EIDR section, in the University Avenue multiple use section, in the flexible multiple use overlay district, in those sections of the bylaw that refer to alterations and tell people what process to follow for approval of those alterations, they're limited to the type of uses that are covered by those sections. So no single family, no two family houses in town would have any, and this definition change would not affect them.
Okay, but if I follow up then just for some of the commercial uses or commercial properties, if I'm trying to go to a basic example, but somebody adds a bush in front of their commercial property, same thing. Is that everything going to be covered here, or is that alterations under other permitted things? And so it's not going to, like, we're not going to get a flood of random small permit requests.
So this change doesn't change the way the bylaw is applied. What it does is it puts people on notice. So the definition of alterations right now only talks about as applied to a building or structure, but the sections of the bylaw that refer to alterations and require approval describe alterations to a building or structure or alterations to a site. In the case of any alteration, the building commissioner determines if it's a substantial or material alteration. So I think that's what's important there, and a material change. And if the building commissioner does not consider it a material change, as adding a shrub or changing out, a bed of flowers or something along those lines, the building commissioner would not consider that a material change, and so therefore would not require it to go for a design review process. However, if there's something that is considered a material change, for instance, removal of street trees or change in the configuration of parking in a commercial structure, or changes to the surfacing of a commercial structure. Say there was a facility that had a tarred parking lot, a bituminous parking lot, and they wanted to change it to a gravel parking lot. Something like that would be an alteration, and that would be referred for approval.
Okay. I guess I have small concerns just over the definition of material change, and if they now need to bring the building inspector for all of those to then determine whether they need the next steps. So it sounds like it's for the majority of residents is not going to be impactful and everything. I understand the explanation. The wiggle room on material change and the needing to get that definition seems very open-ended, but maybe I'm misreading it.
So without, if we don't make this change, if we leave the alterations definition as it is and point to what alterations mean with respect to a building or structure, then that simply leaves what it means with respect to a site completely undefined and simply up to the interpretation of the building commissioner. So the point here is that it's trying to give clarity to the bylaw, trying to show people how the building commissioner would review it and what he would consider a change or not a change for a site alteration. But he already has the authority in the bylaw to decide if a change is de minimis or substantial.
Okay.
Chris?
Yeah, Nora, the temporary structure definition, would that include trash bins? I expect that a trash bin associated with the building permit would be excluded, but what about trash bins unrelated to a building permit?
It would not. So that would be considered a dumpster or recycling container, and that's separately defined in the bylaw. And that, you may remember a couple of years ago, the planning board proposed articles to both the zoning bylaw and the general bylaw to carefully restrict dumpsters and trash and recycling containers. So that's separate. That is not a temporary structure, but it has other requirements. And in most cases, if it's not associated with a construction project, if it's associated with either a non-residential, commercial, institutional, or multifamily residential property, it requires planning board review for a dumpster or recycling container.
All right, thanks.
see any other questions, so we can keep going.
All right. All right, so proposed article PB5 speaks to dimensional regulations. This is to codify the manner in which notes 5 and 7 in section 5.3 are interpreted by the building commissioner to limit the maximum allowable height of a portion of a structure located within a building setback area. The proposed amendment would confirm that the height of the portion of a structure within a setback area would be measured from the grade at its base to the highest portion of the structure within the setback area, and such height would not exceed 15 feet unless the property owner obtains a special permit from the ZBA to permit a greater height. To look at this further, we propose revising section 2.0. So the definition in total refers to the vertical distance from grade plane to the average height of the highest roof surface. The limitations of height shall not apply to chimneys, ventilators, skylights, tanks, bulkheads, penthouses, amateur radio antennas, and other necessary features usually carried above the roof line, provided such features do not cover more than 25% of the area of the roof of the building or structure and are used in no way for human capacity. We propose adding, notwithstanding the above, the height of any portion of a building or structure which is permitted within any setback area pursuant to notes 5, 7 of section 5.3 shall be determined by a measurement of the actual dimension from grade to the highest point of the building or structure within the setback area. And there are some illustrations in the next slides that kind of allude to that. This is illustrations for average building height. And then there are then illustrations that show illustrations for the height of a portion of the building within the setback areas. It will be added to the definitions as well. I believe that, and then the same additional note will be added to section 5.4.2 height determination and exceptions. So notwithstanding the above, where notes 5 and 7 in section 5.3 refer to the height of a portion of a building or structure in a residential district. In these instances, only the height of the portion of the building in question shall be determined by actual dimension from grade to the high point of the structure directly above, I believe. And then we propose revising section 4.5.3.3. This is related to variance or special permit required for new or expansion of a nonconformity. And so notwithstanding the above in this section, in the event that a proposed structure does not comply with the 15-foot height measurement described in sections 2.0 and 5.4.2 for any portion of a residential structure within a setback pursuant to notes 5 and 7 in section 5.3, the zoning board of appeals shall have discretion to consider a special permit, which special permit would allow said structure or portions thereof to be constructed within average height of 15 feet. And I believe that covers the dimensional regulations proposal.
Any questions from the group? I don't see questions anywhere. So I think we can keep going, Elijah.
All right. And then
Actually,
proposed article.
Seth just had a question. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Let me put my video back on too. I'll just take a minute to process that. So if there's a non-conforming structure, the building commissioner then gets basically the authority to determine if his opinion, if it is substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. Aren't almost all of our buildings non-conforming structures in town?
No, they are not. We have many non-conforming lots, and we have a somewhat lesser number of non-conforming structures. This change doesn't actually apply to non-conforming structures. If you have a non-conforming structure and you want to increase the non-conformance of that structure, that would be done under the existing 4.5.3.3. You'd already have the opportunity. If it's not a substantial increase in the nonconformity, you'd have the ability to go for a special permit. If it's considered a substantial increase in nonconformity, which could have a detrimental impact on the neighborhood, you would have to go for a variance. So this is a little bit different. This is for conforming structures on conforming lots or on non-conforming lots. And to be clear, let me just take a step back. A non-conforming structure is a structure that's either too close to one of its side or front or rear lot lines, or its height is higher than what's allowed by the bylaw. A non-conforming lot is a lot where the size of the lot is undersized for its district. So say you're in the single residence C district, which requires 40,000 square feet, and you only have 25,000 square feet, you'd be in a non-conforming lot. If your structure was in the single residence C district and closer than 20 feet to a side lot line, closer than 40 feet to the front lot line, or closer than 30 feet to the rear lot line, or taller than 25 feet in average height, then you would be a non-conforming structure. So these changes apply regardless of whether you're a conforming or non-conforming lot, conforming or non-conforming structure. It's something that's a little bit different.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think I understand that. I just want to maybe explain this scenario to make sure if you could help explain, because like in my neighborhood, every single house is on a non-conforming lot because the conforming lot is 1 acre and nobody has, or maybe 5% of the houses have a house that's actually on 1 acre lot. And so if you want to do anything, for the most part, you need, no, I shouldn't say anything, but for any sort of any small expansion, you basically are immediately rejected for a permit, have to go through the special permit process, which I'll be honest, I think should be looked at some point, because like how much time is being put into that for small changes, because everyone's lots are non-conforming. This concerns me if it hits that scenario for the people on non-conforming lots. Maybe if that's not going to be the case, that's fine. But it worries me that it leaves things to the opinion of the building commissioner what they think is detrimental, versus just saying it's non-conforming already. We have a special permit process. It has to be kicked over to the neighbors and stuff. This seems like a large expansion of the building commissioner's authority based off of their opinion.
So this is actually going in the opposite direction.
Okay.
So right now, section 4.5.3.3, as you can read on your screen, the part that's in black is what's existing. And that's the part that says if you're expanding your nonconformity, then you have to go first to the building commissioner, who will determine if it's a substantial nonconformance that may be detrimental to the neighborhood. He'll send it for a variance. And if it's a lesser nonconformance, which would not be predetermined to be potentially more destructive to the neighborhood, then it would go for a special permit. This is
okay. Thank you. So this
right
adds more dimensional teeth to that. Okay, you're right. I was reading it backwards. Thank you. I appreciate then adding more structure to it. So thanks.
This gives an opportunity for someone who is not eligible to go for a special permit because their lot is not non-conforming. They have a conforming lot, or they have more significantly have a conforming structure. They would not have the opportunity to go for a special permit. They would only go for a variance. However, with this change, if they fall into the very specific conditions here, where they're looking for an addition that falls under note 5 or note 7, so it's in that section of the, they're putting their addition into the setback already. If they're doing that, then they would now have an opportunity to apply for a special permit if this bylaw change passes. If this bylaw change doesn't pass, they would only have the opportunity to apply for a variance. A variance is a higher standard.
Okay,
So this
all right.
actually makes it more beneficial for someone, specifically in the instance of someone wanting to put an addition within that first 5 feet of their setback area.
Okay, no, thank you. That was very helpful. Sorry, I'm sensitive. Every time somebody sneezes in my neighborhood, they have to get a special permit. So thank you.
All right. No more questions, Elijah, so we can keep going.
Okay, so let me just so yeah, this is section PB6, proposed article PB6. This is for administrative office research, the ARO district. And so within this article, it revises the ARO district language to include buffers and screening requirements for proposed developments. This stems from a article hearing process last year in which residents had voiced some concerns, and the planning board wanted to consider buffers for any developments that may be proposed. And so the draft language imposes a 100-foot buffer area for developments within that district. This is less than the 200-foot buffer for developments in the industrial districts, and greater than the 20-foot buffer for developments in highway business and local business districts. In addition to the proposed buffer, there are several commercial uses via a planning board special permit that are proposed in the district as well, including animal clinic, retail sales and services under 10,000 square feet, and then changing the indoor commercial recreation special permit from a ZBA process to specifically the planning board to better streamline that permitting process. So with that, it looks to revise section 6.3.1 as well. So this looks to add commercial outdoor seating in association with permitted commercial uses. And then the buffer area section 6.3.2 then puts that language for the 100-foot buffer in the ARO district in the various parts outlined in red. And again, the buffer is further defined in the administrative research office district, 75 feet. The remaining 25 feet of the buffer area may be used for unenclosed surface, off-street parking, or other permitted outdoor uses, providing such uses are screened from view at normal eye level on said residential district boundary lines. Again, looking to buffer any developments from abutters. And then the proposed language of the principal use table is updated for that planning board special permit for the uses as mentioned before. And I believe that concludes this section.
Paul?
Yeah, quick question, just for clarity, is there a buffer now within the ARO, or does that fall under some other guideline, or is this brand new?
This is brand new. So for some reason, when the ARO zone was established many years ago in the 1970s, buffer districts were established later, and for some reason they were only established in the straight commercial districts, local business, highway business, industrial, and industrial office. For some reason, they were not imposed in the ARO district, and the planning board recognized this last year. You may recall they were considering adding hotel as an allowed
Yep.
use in the ARO district last year. They eventually decided not to go through with adding that additional use, but in looking at the district, they realized that there were no buffer zones and no screening requirements, and so they wanted to add them to be consistent with the other commercial districts.
Okay, good.
Paula?
Yeah, full disclosure, I am in a butter, so this is just a little bit hot button topic in my neighborhood. I appreciate the planning board and, being vigilant and talking about the buffers. I think I speak for my neighborhood when I say we all appreciate the thoughtfulness in that. I'd like a little bit more of an idea of what you're talking about when you say commercial recreation indoor. If you can give me some examples.
Yeah, so this is kind of like recreational sports, basketball court or pickleball court. That would be in indoor use.
And then you mentioned outdoor seating. What would that be for?
Just associated uses with the building, if they have tables or chairs that are associated with the use.
Okay, but it's so, what, I mean, like, if you're talking about an animal clinic, what would the outdoor use be?
Yeah, so this might be specifically for the, I'll defer to my colleagues, but I believe this is, for retail sales under 10,000 square feet. If there were, I don't know, say, an eating section or something like that.
It's actually associated with any commercial use. So right now, we have two ARO districts. One of them has a residential retirement community. It has two office buildings and it has a medical office building as well. Each of those facilities actually have outdoor seating associated with them. We have another ARO district, the one on East Street that's near you, Paula. That one has an office building. I believe at times there have been outdoor seating associated with that office building. I don't know that there currently is. My most recent visit to the site, I didn't think I saw any picnic tables or anything. But this would say that you could have picnic tables associated with an office use. You could have tables associated with a commercial indoor recreation use. Maybe you have not necessarily tables, but maybe seating. Maybe you have a bench near a parking lot for people to sit. If you had indoor tennis court or an indoor soccer facility and you had kids being dropped off and being picked up by parents, you might want a bench outside the facility. So that makes it clear that that the seating area could be within the buffer zone.
Right. I think the term seating area stands or whatever it was that you used makes me immediately think like, okay, there's got to be some indoor outdoor pickleball and that gets really loud and, just.
So that would be, we have two definitions of commercial use, commercial recreation. We have commercial recreation outdoor and we have commercial recreation indoor. To have facilities outdoor, it would have to be permitted as a commercial recreation outdoor use. That is not a permitted use within the ARO zone.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the FinCom group? We do have one public question. Allison, Dan has his hand up if you want to let him come in and speak.
Thank you. I don't know why my video isn't coming up. I apologize for that. Paula, I couldn't agree with you more about the pickleball. I think I put one of my kids through school fighting about pickleball courts on Nantucket. Um, so that can be a real issue. But the reason I'm speaking here and I don't know the facts, and Nora, maybe you can straighten me out. But my concern is establishing a buffer zone for the ARO now when we've got existing commercial office buildings in the ARO. I'm worried about making them non-conforming and putting them in a position where they would have to get zoning relief if they ever wanted to redevelop those properties, and that making it more difficult to redevelop commercial properties in town when there's generally been a sentiment that we really want to see redevelopment of commercial properties to keep the commercial property tax base up. Now, it might be fine if there's an existing buffer zone that meets that 100-foot requirement, but I just don't know whether that exists or not. And so that's my question. Are we going to render some existing commercial office buildings non-conforming?
So there are four distinct properties within the two ARO districts. 3 of those commercial properties would be conforming with these requirements. The fourth one, which is the Dental Arts Building at 100 High Street, would not be conforming with this. So if they were to, if anyone can picture that, it's a kind of an old yellow building. I believe it was once upon a time a school, and is now dental arts facility. If they wish to demolish that building and put something else in its place, then they would be non-conforming under this section and they would require a variance.
Yeah, okay, that's helpful because I was most concerned about, and again, I'm not representing any private clients here, but I'm harkening back to my days on the Business Development Advisory Board, which was a long time ago. And you know, and even a year ago when I did represent a private client at Lambert's Plaza to move that from non-conforming to conforming because it was so difficult to redevelop that site once it was non-conforming. And I just, as a resident, am reluctant to see that happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. I don't see any other questions right now.
All
So
right.
we can keep going.
All right, so this is proposed article PB7/8, short-term rental properties. So this was previously 2 articles, 1 zoning and 1 general bylaw. However, it was seen as a better practice to have it together, just to in terms of reviewing it. And so this relates to short-term rental units, and it would create a new zoning bylaw, section 8.6. Within that, we'll revise section 2.0 definitions to add short-term rental and long-term rental. This would also adjust the accessory use table to allow short-term rentals and long-term rentals by right in residential districts, not allowed in commercial districts. And then it would also create a new general bylaw, chapter 330, which would be the part of the proposed warrant article that has more of the regulatory, language for short-term rentals. And so within that, and I'll explain in some of the later slides, a property owner or short-term rental operator must reside on the property for at least 9 months of the calendar year. It's limited to the number of bedrooms within a dwelling unit multiplied by 2 for the maximum numbers of people that can rent one. So if you think a 3-bedroom unit times 2, so 6 people is allowed in one of those short-term rentals. And then a 5-bedroom unit would still only allow 8 people at the max. To get into a little more of the overview, this would need a certificate of registration. So the town planner, along with the health division, building division, and fire department would review it. It'd be valid for 1 calendar year. It would not be transferable, so null and void upon any change in property ownership and or upon any change in the primary residence. And there would be an ability to deny for good cause. But again, that would honestly be as written if any of like the submittal requirements being the were not there, such as the application fee, proof of primary residence, floor plan, parking plan. You would need local contact information of the short-term rental operator and at least one additional contact person to be available 24 hours a day. In the event that an emergency or issue came up, provided with name, address, email address, and cell phone number. That would be posted to the town website. And then it cannot be rented out for more than 90 days in a year. So those regulations would be impacting a new section 8.6 in the zoning bylaw, which defines short-term rentals, the purpose, applicability, and the general requirements. Again, it would point to the certificate of registration, which is in the general bylaw. And then it defines short-term rentals and long-term rentals. It again, as mentioned earlier, would address updating the accessory use table. So it's a by right use in the residential districts, not the commercial districts. And then again, the meat of this is in the new general bylaw, chapter 330. This would define a purpose, applicability, enforcement authority, which is the town planner. And then definitions for primary residence, as I had mentioned earlier, any property at which a resident resides for at least 9 months of the calendar year. A short-term rental operator has to be an owner. And then this goes into the eligibility. Has to be compliant with all building codes, fire codes, health codes, which is why those associated divisions would be involved with it. Would be would not so a short-term rental unit shall not be subject to any outstanding violations. So they have to be operating and to code. Then they again, the occupancy is no more than 8 people, regardless of the number of bedrooms in a said facility or residence. And again, for the certificate of registration, this goes through the town planner review along with the health, building, and fire department. It would be subject to state and federal as well as local laws. Valid for 1 calendar year. Again, non-transferable, and would need to submit all of your needed floor plans, parking plans, things of that nature. As mentioned in the submittal requirements, proof of residency, the local contact information so that someone is available in the event that something happens at one of these short-term rental units. There would be a notice to abutters on the issuance of a certificate of registration. Then if there are multiple violations, there is a suspension and revocation. It would be subject to inspections as well. And then there are some requirements that include not renting it out for more than 90 days in a calendar year. And also making sure that you add the necessary fire safety needs. So, someone renting this facility would need to know the exits, making sure they know where any fire preventative measures are in the unit. They'll also have a binder for any contact information and needs for said facility. And again, they need to, be able to be contacted with the names and contact information as well. So I believe that covers that. There's, I think this also goes into any penalties. They can be subject to fines based on violating any measures of this. There's reporting that will be used based on the certificate of registration. And yes, sorry. So that concludes this section.
Thanks, Elijah. Alex and then Susan.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation and the details. I just, having listened to this sort of exhaustive list of requirements and floor plans and parking plans and binders and all that kind of stuff, this seems really cumbersome. And maybe the intent here is to dissuade people from short-term rentals, but if we think about a reasonable situation where, hey, you're going to take your family to the Cape for a couple weeks and there's a sports game in town, a la the World Cup or something like that. And you're like, hey, maybe I'll rent out our place for 3 days, 5 days a week. Or if there's some people coming to visit family members and they want a place to stay for a week. I mean, this is almost going to make it so that any short-term rental situation is going to be done totally off the books, not through Airbnb, not through VRBO, et cetera. So I don't know if that's the intent here, is to make this so burdensome and cumbersome that people just simply throw their hands in the air and say, forget it, or throw their hands in the air and say, forget it, here's my number, call me, we'll do it off the books, which I think has its own challenges for Airbnb and VRBO do provide some level of insurance for both the renter and the short-term host, which there's benefit to. So I just want to throw that sort of general feeling I got here based on that presentation of like, whoa, we're going from zero to 100. Right now, you can put your place on Airbnb, I think, as mentioned, with a Massachusetts certificate of some sort, and now you've got to go through these crazy hoops. It just seems like a lot to me. It seems like going from nothing to a ton of red tape. So I just wanted to share that perspective.
Nora, did you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest it might be helpful to hear from one or more of the planning board members who support this proposal. It is a significant change to our bylaws. So right now we have approximately up to 20 homes in town over the course of a year that may be rented out for a weekend, a week, a month, and some of them rented repeatedly, but it's about 20. So that's about 0.3% of all the units in Westwood right now. But I thought it might be helpful to hear from planning board members who are supportive of this article.
I don't know if anyone on the planning board wants to comment. Otherwise, I can go down through our folks that have questions. Mike, Bill.
Yeah, I can comment, but I'd rather let my colleagues go first. I'll hold mine till they've spoken.
I think Phil beat me to it, so I'll let Phil take the first shot at a response to Alex's very good questions.
Yeah, and very good questions. I'm not sure that this is going for 0 to 100, but it's the point of it is also trying to put some kind of structure around it. And you always have the opportunity if someone's going to try to stay outside of the Airbnb kind of registration regime. But I part in some respects, the point being this is not a substantial problem, which Nora mentioned. But you also have things, and there's possibilities of future events such as the World Cup, where we need to put some infrastructure in place where without having a completely, I don't want to say black market, but completely unregistered, unknown kind of situation. If you're going to go the Airbnb route, which et cetera, which a lot of people would and likely use, I think you need to be you have to take some steps. The town just does not necessarily feel that, or at least the planning board does not necessarily feel that somebody who's renting for, you know, a World Cup event and all of a sudden there's, loud and boisterous parties or other kinds of things to have no structure in place. So I'm a strong advocate of this. I think others of the planning board also are. So I'll defer to Mike now without talking too much more.
Yeah, so in drafting these regulations, we're sort of trying to balance the property rights of an individual homeowner with the rights of a town to kind of plan how its land is used. I think we believe that, renting house for commercial revenue is sort of a commercial use that generally commercial uses aren't allowed in residential districts. That being said, again, we're trying to balance it with a property owner's individual rights. So, I mean, these regulations, they're kind of in line with what Brookline and the city of Boston has done. They're no more restrictive than those cities. We think an important thing is to capture revenue from this commercial use. Particularly with the additional taxes that we can capture from this, like we do with meal and hotel. And, honestly, a lot of people, would like us to restrict this, even further. So this was our attempt at a balance where we can regulate it, we can potentially make more tax revenue off of it. We can limit the commercial use to an extent, although it is still permitted. And, as long as you just file some paperwork and do a little work up front, I don't know there's definitely work up front to be done, but it's definitely if you want to operate a commercial enterprise out of your house, it's doable. But I think we're all open to hear, if we think this is too restrictive, if it should be more restrictive. I would say on the planning board side, we hear from residents who want it to be even more restrictive. So it would be great to hear both sides if anyone else has any thoughts on any of these specific provisions. But again, I would say these are in line with what Brookline and Boston does, and we do want to be able to capture tax revenue from this commercial use.
Can I just thank you, Mike and Philip. I think Mike comparing it to or being in line with Brookline and Boston, I think is sort of furtherance of my concern here of like we are definitely not Brookline and Boston in terms of people wanting to rent Airbnbs and stay. And so I think that if we're raising the bar to where they are, we do not have nearly the Airbnb potential or current market as it sounds like Nora had shared from a data perspective. So I won't belabor the point, but I feel like this is sort of really too cumbersome and too regulation heavy for what I think we need given our town, given the fact that it's not a premium vacation destination in Massachusetts. So I think we should consider dialing this back to make it less cumbersome. While I'm all about taking in revenue and in alignment with additional sources for the town, but I think without some of this sort of extreme red tape as I see it. So thank you.
Susan?
Great, thank you. Yes, I share some of Alex's points, and but thank you for your explanations on a number of them. It was helpful. But I had a specific question just about the provision that would allow the town planner, to deny for good cause. And I'm just curious as to how that would be operationalized, what sort of parameters or guardrails would there be around there, or guidance? And are there other areas of the bylaws where we have similar language, where ability to deny something for a good cause?
Nora, you want to?
Sure. So the only other section in the bylaw that I think has something like that is that the planning board or the zoning board, whoever's a special permit granting authority, has the right to deny a special permit application for a good cause, or an extension. They have the right to deny an extension. Say they grant a special permit for 2 years, and they can deny an extension if the applicant comes back for good cause. There is nothing in the planning board, there's nothing in the zoning bylaw currently that gives that type of authority to the town planner.
Thanks, Nora.
And can
Anything else,
anybody speak to
Suzanne?
how it would be sort of, how would we operationalize that?
So the general bylaw section, as it is spelled out here, specifies exactly what would be required to be reviewed. So for instance, there's a review of the property itself, and their inspections, health inspection, building inspection, and fire inspection. If they were to fail any of those inspections, that would be good cause for denial. If they had past violations for failure to meet any of the other requirements, this is very stringent. If they need to have a 3-year record, obviously starting from the day they open, and then going back 3 years from when they're in existence. They need to maintain a record of who has stayed at the property, what dates they've stayed there, what is their contact information, what is their home address. This, if they fail to provide that information, if they had a violation in the past where they had exceeded the number of days allowed, or rented out their place for less than 24 hours, any of the terms that are specifically put in the general bylaw, if the operator fails to abide by those terms in their license, they can have their license or their certificate, they can have their certificate revoked. And then if they applied for another one, that would be good cause for them to be denied. So I don't think that the town planner could go beyond what's in the specific language of the
Okay, I think that was my concern. I think as long as it's sort of tied to what's there in the specific language, and not just up to the individual town planner to decide on their own what they think is cause and good cause. So as long as we think it's clear, it's linked to those other provisions in the bylaw, then
yeah. So
that makes
Elijah,
sense.
could you step back to the section that lays out the terms for review, the submittal requirements?
Yes. All right.
So all of the submittal requirements, the town planner would be reviewing those documents that are listed there. And then there's another section on suspension or revocation. That's section 330.11. And that lists the specific terms under which someone could lose their certificate. And then there's inspections in the next section that list who's inspecting and what they're looking for. So I think the good cause would be any violation of any section there. I don't think it's just open for, the town planners doesn't like something about the property that's being proposed, or the neighbors are just complaining that they don't want a rental unit. That would not be good cause to deny a certificate. If the certificate should be issued because the property meets all the requirements, it met the inspections, the operator lives there for 9 months, they haven't leased it for more than 90 days in a calendar year, then they should be eligible for a certificate.
Great. Thank you.
Chris?
Thanks, Bill. Let me say at the outset that I support this proposal. I remember a number of years ago, the planning board came to the FinCom with a proposed zoning bylaw change to address this issue. And the principal question we asked at that time was, why? Is there a problem? Is there a problem in town? And it doesn't sound like there's a problem in town, but you don't want to wait until there is before you try to address it. So I support this. Yes, it's a little bit um, administrative intensive, let me put it that way. But I think if somebody really wants to do it, they'll navigate the requirements and get their certificate. There's only one specific thing I would say about the proposal, and that is section 310, 33010 of the general bylaws, notice to abutters. And I would say that's a little bit too restrictive. The notice should go out to what is normally the case with the planning board notice, everybody within a 300-foot radius of the location. And I would also put 300 feet vertically as well as horizontal, because now we're starting to see in town some apartment buildings, and you wouldn't want somebody to argue that I'm not in a butter because I live below the person who's trying to rent, and that's not included in the definition of a butter. Likewise, if I live across the street from somebody who wants to do one of these things, I wouldn't want somebody to argue that I wasn't in a butter. So I would change that to notice to all owners, property owners within 300 feet of the border of the property that's about to be certified. In terms of money, well, let's elaborate that. I'm not sure the assessor is going to reassess a property that has a certificate as a commercial property just because they're possessing a short-term rental certificate. So where's the money going to come from aside from the application fee? And lastly, for people who are concerned about the World Cup, even bylaw changes have to be approved by the Attorney General. I think even zoning bylaw changes have to be approved by the Attorney General, if I'm correct. General bylaw changes may even need legislative approval before they take effect. So I think we're already too late for the World Cup. And anybody who wants to rent their property out for a short term during the World Cup, I think you're going to do it under the existing regulations, whatever they may be. But I wonder if somebody could elaborate on where they think the money is going to come from.
Amanda, I saw you had your hand raised.
Yeah, if I can just clarify on the abutters. So when the assessor's office gives us an abutters list for any type of notification, it's based on address. So it doesn't matter where you are on that parcel. So if you have an apartment building, whether you're on the 5th floor or the 1st floor, you would get it if you're on that address. Just like if you have a large property, say, use Fox Hill Village as an example, there wouldn't be a scenario where only half the residents would get a notification. It would be the entire property. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then in terms of, I can address the funds question. This is only imposing fees for violations. The planning board doesn't have any jurisdiction over imposing any additional taxes or fees tied to, that would go to our tax base. But I defer to the planning board on the other question.
Okay, thanks. And that also raises the question about whether the planning board should be proposing a general bylaw change. What does the select board think about this?
Well, Chris, let me jump in really quick with the tax part of it. That would have to be addressed by the select board. And under Massachusetts law, I just looked it up because I forgot the exact number, but I believe municipalities can impose an additional 6% local tax, just like we do with hotels. And so that could be brought up, by the select board potentially next year. But there is a 6% tax that we could capture for the town.
So 6% of what the resident is charging for the short-term rental.
I'd have to look up if it's revenue or what the precise definition is. But yeah.
If I could just speak to that. So
Yeah,
right
Nora.
now, all of the Airbnbs, VRBO rentals that are in town are currently being taxed. And we are receiving our local share of that tax under the hotel tax. So this, having this bylaw or not having this bylaw, does not change the fact that we would be eligible to receive our share because we have adopted the hotel's tax. So we do receive that now. There is an additional tax that communities can choose to opt into for short-term rentals that is over and above the hotel tax. That's something that Westwood has not yet considered. If there is a short-term rental bylaw that gets passed by voters, that might be something that the select board want to propose in a future year. That is not on this current town meeting. So the tax implications, I guess, would be if we end up seeing more short-term rentals because of this change, our revenue would go up. If we end up seeing less, our revenue would go down. But as I said, it's not substantial. We only have 20 properties at the most at any one time that are being offered for short-term rental.
That's it. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. George.
Thank you, Bill. I see all the hands, so I want to be brief. I mean, and this doesn't happen often, but I agree 10,000% with Alex. What we're doing here, guys, a comparison to Brookline in Boston, with all respect, is a horrible comparison. We have to compare to like-kind communities. Medfield, Needham, even Needham and Norwood have double the population. But to compare to Brookline, which has got a population of 63,000 people, as compared to Westwood, you can't compare to a town or a community to accommodate the statistics. It doesn't work, and we are over regulating here way too much, to the point of people are just going to say, I'm not going to do that. And Nora brought up an amazing point just now. I mean, she says we are getting tax dollars on this. We are right now, we do have regulations in place and we are getting some money. You can say we're not optimizing or maximizing our dollars, but if you go too far to one way, left or right, but if you go too far, we're not going to get anything, because it's going to be jumping through way too many hoops, and people are just going to see the list and say, oh, I decided not to do it, and they're going to do it on a catch basis. But again, Alex, spot on. Thank you.
I want to let Angela and then Chris go, and then Maureen and Phil, I see your hands up. I just want to let those two have had their hands up for a while too.
Hi, thanks. So George, Alex, I agree 100%. The red tape here is just, it's way too much. It's extremely invasive of property owners' rights. I think we need to go back, take another look at this. It's too much. And, I think the other thing is, how do we plan to monitor it, right? So there's several people that already mentioned, people are going to do it regardless, right? So now they aren't going to abide by the rules, and it's going to be hard to track. How do we plan to track it? How do we plan to monitor that proposals are being met, that people are abiding by the rules? Is it going to be a he says, she says, neighbors are reporting people? I just think that this is going a little bit too far. The other question I had was, and this could need maybe some clarity. So are we putting, we're going to put some rules in place regarding short-term, but then also long-term? So are we saying that you can only rent for this amount of time for short-term rentals, but then also 90 days for long-term? Is that a misunderstanding, or can someone clarify that for me, please?
So I think I can speak to that. So what we're doing is we're putting long-term rental in as simply saying it's allowed use. If you're renting your home for more than 28 days, that's a long-term rental. If it's less than 28 days, that's a short-term rental. Only short-term rentals are proposed to be restricted under the bylaw. Long-term rental is simply a permitted use.
Thanks, Nora. Anything else, Angela?
No, thank you. I'm all set.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah,
Chris,
just reiterate, Alex, George, Angela, I 100% agree. I think this is just extremely too much red tape. I think we're talking about potential revenue that we may get. I think you have a residents in Westwood that are frankly kind of sick of being taxed on things. And I think what this is ultra introducing is you're actually adding a lot of cost to the town of Westwood. There's a lot of inspections, permits, other things that we're going to have to run as a town because of this. And it's just overly too much red tape. And I also 100% agree. Comparing this to Brookline and Boston is just out of bounds. So I'd ask the board to go back and look at this.
Maureen and Phil, I know you had your hands up for a little bit. Any comments from the planning board? And then I see Margaret, you put your hand up too in a minute. I'll get to you.
Want me to go, Phil?
You're up first. Go ahead, Maureen. I've already
Okay.
spoken, and then I'll go.
Hi. Hi. I guess our intent with this was there were neighbors that were concerned about one of the rental properties. So I think this is how this came forward, and we were trying to envision and come up with something that may be workable to help, these people that were in the area where there was, an ARO. And the other thing too, we did look for comparable, and we really couldn't find anything. Like there are places down the Cape, which of course those are destinations. And then you have like Brookline and Boston, which you're right. They're not, we couldn't find something comparable to Westwood. That's where some of the things came up as we took them out from the Boston and Brookline. So that's all I had to say.
Thanks, Maureen. Phil.
One of the things I think FinCom is ignoring, this is a commercial enterprise, a commercial enterprise in a residential area. We went through this at length, and we consider lots and lots of things with respect to commercial enterprises, much differently than if somebody's just having a guest staying in their home. Commercial enterprises plunked down in the middle of a neighborhood is far different than simply saying this is the denial of property rights. We go through all sorts of site plans and all sorts of other things for commercial enterprises. And we have to put some guardrails around it. Guardrails because the best interest of the residents, particularly those that are impacted by the short-term rental, is something that I think has a heightened concern as compared to somebody that simply says, I'm being denied my property rights because I should have the right to have a commercial enterprise in my building. Well, no, we were just talking about animal daycare, adult daycare, putting guardrails around that, licensures that exist by the Commonwealth. These are reasonable. They are intended to protect the individuals of Westwood for short-term rentals. And to say you're simply denying property rights, well, those individuals also get benefits from the town, which is first responders. If there's something that occurs, you're going to have police services, you're going to have the fire station, you're going to have lots of other things, which those short-term rentals are going to get the benefit of. We incur those costs now, and if someone is going to be doing this, they should at a minimum get a registration. We should be apprised of what's going on. And finally, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is a zero. I think Nora said 0.3%. This is not, the level of concern that I think I'm hearing from FinCom. And I would strongly suggest that you reconsider the approach and recognize a commercial enterprise should have some guardrails around it before it just simply gets punked down in a residential neighborhood. And then finally, just with respect to Chris's, you're right with respect to, I believe you're right anyways, with respect to the World Cup. It would probably have to go to the Attorney General, and we probably missed that window. Doesn't mean that we, just because the World Cup, it's a one-time event, there's going to be other things that will likely come up. And I think appropriate guardrails are exactly in this proposed bylaw.
Margaret, and then Mike, and then Alex.
Yeah, quick question. It is a very small percentage of the population that rents out. How many people came forward, and what was the chief issue you were hearing from them? Was it parking, loud parties? What were the drivers?
I don't know. Nora or somebody on the planning board wants to comment to that?
So at the planning board hearing in this go around, they heard from the residents of one neighborhood. I don't know exactly how many people were there. I would say somewhere between 10 and 20 people came to that meeting and spoke about their concerns with a particular home that's being rented in that neighborhood on a very frequent basis. Back in 2017, the last time the planning board, I'm sorry, it was 2020, the last time the planning board had actually proposed an article for short-term rental. That was planned to go to the 2020 town meeting, which if you remember, that 2020 town meeting was limited to budget articles only, and then the planning board chose not to bring it back in 2021. At that time, it was also a single neighborhood, probably again about 10 to 20 people who were concerned about a different house. So two different neighborhoods over the last 6 years that had concerns about individual properties.
Nora, does Amanda receive other phone calls? Does she want to speak to? Yeah.
So in the almost 3 years that I've been here, I do get calls from time to time just because they're not sure who to call about it, and they see housing in my title. I have to be delicate just because of fair housing obligations, but usually the reasons for not wanting it there are not things that we would be able to make any decisions on for fair housing reasons. So like things along the lines of who's staying there, background checks, things like that. So it's not anything that's actionable from that perspective, but I would say it's been pretty infrequent over the past 3 years.
Mike, do you have anything additional?
Sure. Very, very briefly. Thank you. The several views we heard tonight, very helpful. It's going to generate more discussion at our next planning board meeting as we go through this again. I also encourage anyone who's watching this or who watches this, if you have an opinion on this, attend our next meeting. I frankly thought this would go the other way. I thought even if we brought this article as is to town meeting, there would be an uproar that we were even permitting any type of short-term rentals. That's the sort of the temperature that I've kind of gotten from different people around town. In terms of the Brookline Boston comparison, it's good to hear again to hear these views. I actually had seen it the other way. I would have thought a town like Westwood would want to regulate short-term rentals even more restrictively than a major city. But what I'm hearing is it might some people think of it in the reverse, that we would regulate it less restrictively. So again, I encourage anyone who watches this or is watching to come to our next meeting. We'd love to hear more views in town to get a temperature check on kind of where to ratchet this up in terms of the regulation and the restrictiveness. Because again, it is a balance. And we are striving to kind of represent what we think the town in general would want this to look like. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Alex?
Thanks, Bill. Thanks everybody for your comments. I just wanted to reply or raise one sort of counterpoint to what Phil had said about regulating commercial enterprise. I mean, I think we're all homeowners in Westwood, and I think we know what property values, cost of home ownership, taxes are to live in this town, which in turn make this not a very viable commercial enterprise to run an Airbnb in Westwood on a any kind of permanent basis or semi-permanent basis, right? You've got $1 million homes plus and high taxes, and not a place where there's a ton of demand for short-term rentals outside of maybe these one in every now and again sort of sporting events or other things. But I really don't think this is a commercial enterprise that has much propensity to it, just given the high cost of ownership and the relative low demand for these types of properties. So I'm all about regulating commercial enterprises, but I just don't know that this, in my mind, constitutes as one, given the economics don't really favor this type of business model in town. So thank you all.
Ellen?
Yeah, thanks. Like I said, I wanted to let my colleagues speak first. I also appreciate the perspective because we've heard from numerous residents, but I appreciate the counterpoint. I guess my perspective, I've been thinking about this in two ways, is just because we only have 20 now doesn't mean that will always be the case. And at what point does it make sense to do something and have something on the books? But I actually, as someone who, when I'm looking for a short-term rental, I actually appreciate a property that's got some regulation on it. Like as a consumer, knowing that there is some oversight, I'm not going to show up and find it to be a disaster, and then I have no recourse if the person who's rented it to me hangs up and charges my credit card. Anyway, if I'm looking at a list of properties and I see one that is listed as it's certified, blah, 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 to me, that's a positive. So from my perspective, it isn't the idea of regulating and adding some oversight isn't just for the benefit of the neighborhood. It's for the people who would be coming to rent a property and also for the property owner. And they would have to go through a few more steps to get that license. But again, maybe their property would be more marketable if it's looked at as a property that is well regulated, well maintained, up to whatever, standards this would impose. So I appreciate your perspectives too, but I think the board wasn't just looking at it from the perspective of we're responding to neighbor concerns. That's definitely important to us, but I think we saw this as potentially beneficial to all involved parties. But we appreciate your perspective, and I'll echo what Mike said too, that the more feedback we get, the better it helps guide us as to what we're trying to do. So this is great, and we would love to hear from more residents as well.
I'll shift now because we have some public questions. There was one public comment. If you want to speak still, raise your hand and then I'll get to you next. But Dan, if you could appoint him, Allison, he has some comments, and then we have two more after that.
Thank you.
Sorry, address again, Dan.
29 Martingale Lane. Again, I don't have any clients in Westwood that are trying to short-term rent, but I spent 5 to 6 years of my professional life in the last 5 or 6 years dealing with this issue on Nantucket. And ultimately, I wrote the zoning article that was passed last fall by the Nantucket Town Meeting that decided to allow short-term rentals on Nantucket. I'm litigation counsel in a couple of cases, including the grape case. This is hard because the case law in Massachusetts, starting with Styler v. Linfield, and let's talk about a very similar community to Westwood, Linfield. The Massachusetts Supreme Court said short-term rentals are not an allowed use under the town of Linfield zoning bylaw because they are not expressly allowed. That case, which got a lot of play, there was a house in Linfield that was a party house, and it was rented out on a weekend basis. And maybe it was the only house in Linfield that was rented out like that, but it was a hellhole, and it was a wild party, and there was a murder there. And that's ultimately what happened in Linfield. I'm not suggesting that that happens in Westwood, but what I'm suggesting is we're having the wrong conversation here. In a suburban community like Westwood, not a resort community like Nantucket, the Vineyard, Barnstable, Wellfleet, where there's a long history of short-term rentals. There's no history of short-term rentals in our town. My neighbors on either side of me spend their entire summers on the Cape. I don't want them short-term renting their houses for party houses. I've handled cases in Barnstable where a client had nothing to do but complain about the bachelorette parties next door all day. This is not a use we want. I understand the planning board's trying to get to regulate it to protect the neighborhoods, but the far better way to do this, it's not allowed under current law. Let's be explicit and say short-term rentals are not allowed in Westwood. We have the right to do that. People talk about property rights. You move into a residential neighborhood And you think you have the right to rent out your property for $5,000 for the weekend? No, you don't. Not if the town zoning says no. This is the primary reason I tuned in tonight and I commented on some other stuff. This is incredibly litigious and difficult and will drag the town down through months, years, maybe even tens of years of litigation and zoning board hearings about recommendation. Just say no. That's not the community we live in. We don't have short-term rentals next door. Let's just stop it. Thank you.
Can I just follow up with a quick question? Dan?
Sure.
I think the planning board's impression was if we did an outright ban, which I'm not saying everyone would support, but if we did, that would create years of litigation for the town of Westwood.
No. The Styler case in Linfield said there's no short-term rentals. The Great case on Nantucket said the only allowable short-term rentals is if they're customary and incidental, accessory uses. Well, short-term rentals in a place like Nantucket, where they've been doing them for 100 years, they might be customary and incidental. In fact, I won that case for another client. You can't say short-term rentals in Westwood are customary and incidental. I appreciate the concern, but I don't think we should be afraid to tell someone, no, we can't do it in town. Bring a zoning enforcement action, cut it down, stop it.
Thanks, Dan.
And Nora will tell you that there is no greater advocate for private property rights than me.
Thanks, Dan. Amanda, do you have a comment? Phil and Tim, I see your hands raised, but I'm going to wait because I want more the other public comment before the rest of the group comes in. But Amanda, I didn't know if you had something specific.
Yeah, I was just going to offer some clarification. So the Linfield case and also the Nantucket case, essentially those both ruled that if short-term rentals wasn't explicitly listed in the bylaw, it's not a permitted use.
I agree.
Nantucket was the most recent case, and in that case, they were going to appeal it, but because the town passed zoning changes, it never went to appeal. Where it gets a little gray for us is typically how land use is interpreted is if it's not listed in the zoning bylaw, then it can't be banned. Like for example, not having the battery energy storage systems in the bylaw gives us no recourse if someone were to come in with a BESS facility. But this ruling in the case of short-term rentals goes against that usual case of how it's followed. So that's where it's been a bit of a gray area for planning and zoning staff in general in any community in Massachusetts. And Nora might have more insight on that.
Just, Elijah, could you go back to slide 43 where it shows the changes in the use chart? I want you to display the current language for a category we have that's in our accessory uses, which allows renting of rooms by a resident owner or the furnishing of table board in a dwelling by the resident owner to not more than three persons other than members of the family. That's what's currently allowed, and it's currently allowed in all districts, all residential districts. So right now, you're allowed to rent your property, and there's no limit on how long or short you can rent the property. So if there is an interest in restricting or eliminating short-term rental, there is a change that's needed. So our bylaw, unlike Linfield's, actually allows rental and does not restrict it by time period. So this is why the board had looked at this back in 2020 and was going to propose a short-term rental, and they were going to disallow it at that time. They were not proposing a restriction in our general bylaw. They were simply proposing eliminate short-term rental. This planning board is proposing a process to regulate short-term rental. And what this would do is it would not allow properties to simply be purchased for continuous rental. the property would have to have the owner operator living in the property for 9 months of the year. So this would impose restrictions that are not currently imposed, but it would allow the use within those restrictions. So I just want to just make it clear what the bylaw does currently and what the bylaw would do under this proposed change, or if the planning board proposes a different change, how that would affect the bylaw.
Thanks, Nora. We have another public comment. Allison, can you allow Jen to speak?
Hi there.
Hi, we can hear you.
Perfect. Hi, my name is Jennifer Kelly. I am an attorney, mother of two who lives on 25 Juniper Ridge Road. Not to take credit, I am one of the people who spearheaded the request for these bylaws because I live next to an Airbnb. The apartment can be seen directly on my property line. We can see them and they can see us. And I think I'm hearing a lot of what I had originally heard from some other people whose minds I think I've actually possibly changed, which is that it's not currently a problem. Why are we fixing anything? But I also have the feeling that none of you would want this in your backyard when your children are coming over to play with my kindergartner and second grader, and you don't know who is watching you through the trees next door. I moved here after a decade of living in Boston proper because I was done with the city. I was done with not knowing who my neighbors were. I grew up in Canton. I know what it's like to have a lovely neighborhood where I know all my neighbors and doors are always open. If I wanted a transient and unsafe community, I would have stayed in Boston. Instead, I chose to move closer back to home and pay an exorbitant amount of taxes. You want to talk taxes? To now live next door to transient neighbors coming to and from the Route 128 train station. How do I know that's where they're going? Because they've stopped the children on our street and asked for directions and scared the living daylights out of all of us. Is there technically currently a problem? Maybe not, aside from all of us in this neighborhood, which is comprised of approximately 30 houses on 2 streets, feeling generally unsafe. But I am a mother, and I do not wait for problems to occur that may jeopardize my children's safety. I take proactive steps to stop them, and this town should too. We are suing the land trust for tens of thousands of dollars, and I think this is more important than that. You are spending $300 million on schools to attract young families here. Do you think they want to live next to random people who come and go every 3 days, including allowing sex offenders to do so because they can stay there if it's under 4 days? You don't think that that hurts the town's reputation and the home value? I think comparing this situation to Cape House rentals is apples to oranges, and it's bananas. The Cape is a destination location. Rentals are common and they serve a purpose. We don't need rentals in the little cozy neighborhood town of Westwood. There are hotels literally 5 minutes walking distance from my house, right in University Station. I don't care if it's 5 rentals, I don't care if it's 20. The hoods that it affects, and I know some of you might live on Hedgerow or other places where you'll never live next to an Airbnb. And this won't affect you unless your children come to play with mine. And I want you to think about that. So I think taxes and money aside, if you want to build this community with the families that you are seeking to, then you should listen to the ones that this affects. And I am one of them. And I'm happy to sit down further with any of you at your convenience and have calls or coffee to chat further. Or you can come over and bring your children and let me know how it feels to have them playing here, not knowing who's staring at them through the trees. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Jen. Amanda, did you have something you wanted to address?
Yeah, so I just want to make a note. The planning board already knows this, but the FinCom, I know our fair housing training got postponed. Fair housing does apply to short-term rentals, so the board should caution against any conversation about who would be staying in rentals or anything like that to avoid any violations of that.
Thank you. All right, Phil, one last set of comments and then we'll go on.
I've already talked a lot. I would point out because I've written about and there's in terms of the ban, I would mention to Dan there's litigation going on against the city of Cambridge, which I actually forwarded to Amanda and some others on the staff, where simply a ban and that litigation is whether or not there's a property taking on an unconstitutional property taking for affordable housing, which could have an extraordinary impact. I think a ban is problematic, and I think we're taking a significant risk. I think the planning board has taken, and I hear a lot of the concerns, and I'm not going to belabor, I've spoken too much tonight, but we tried to take a balanced approach between the neighbors, as you just heard Jen speaking, and the town for what, again, I view as a commercial enterprise. And I think it is not unreasonable to put guardrails in place as compared to a blatant ban, which I think could be problematic, and simply make sure that those properties that are looking for commercial benefits out of a residential property have to register, have to take certain steps, and that gives some guardrails for the town. I think it's a reasonable approach. I'd ask that FinCom consider some of the competing interests that the town has had. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. That was a healthy discussion. Appreciate the feedback. And we'll see how this progresses. Do we want to
I appreciate you moving this along, Bill. We talked about this till midnight last time, so I appreciate it.
It was actually past midnight.
Do we want to go on to the last two, Elijah?
Yes. All right. So let's move forward. All right. So the next one is proposed article PB9, indoor commercial recreation. So this is a change. So currently you would need a zoning board of appeal special permit in addition to an EIDR from the planning board for such type of use. And so this is to better streamline the process. It would just be a one stop at the planning board for a special permit. And we thought that this was a good proposal to just help streamline and better make use of regulatory time and effort.
Chris, you have a question?
Yeah, just real quick. A lot of the changes I see that the planning board is proposing is moving a lot of the permitting away from the Board of Appeals and giving it to the planning board. Just as a general capacity issue, is the planning board willing to step up and has the capacity to do all this extra work, especially the town planner?
So sorry, Nora, do you want to respond to that or?
Go right ahead.
I believe in pretty much all of these instances, it would be a two-part process. It would be ZBA and planning board. We have our own review process anyway, so it's not really adding extra work. It's, from our perspective, it streamlines it for the applicant. It removes the cost of having to pay for the ZBA permit application and the extra time to go through their process as well.
Okay, thanks.
No, I like the idea of this. It streamlines things and encourages somebody to develop something that would be beneficial to the town, especially the commercial tax base, which we know is important.
All right.
See any other questions? So
and then the last one here is just proposed article PB11. This is our kind of standing housekeeping article. It helps to correct errors or inconsistencies and clarify sections. A lot of the proposed ones, 8 in total, are more just numerical errors in terms of the section number. And then some of them are proposed just edits to better clarify.
Okay. I don't see any questions. Everybody questioned themselves out on the other one. Oh, Angela.
Just a quick question, for back to Article 5. I was just curious, does that have anything to do with the ADU law that was passed back in 2024?
Does not.
No.
Okay, thank you.
On your final housekeeping item, it always amazes me what we find, and so we will find a whole bunch more again next year, and this will continue to be my favorite article, the cleanup on aisle 3.
Yes.
I don't see any other questions, so thank you guys. I think Ellen, you have to.
Oh, it looks like there's one.
Oh, is there a question?
We would just need your address, Sarah. Sorry. Thank you. Oh, it's Ryan. Bill, do you want to take or do you want me to take it?
You can take it.
Okay, Ryan Chipman, 81 Cobley Street. I would like to clarify that PB5 does apply to ADUs. That is true, but it's not related to the law that passed last year that allowed ADUs by right, that removed the discretionary part there. So it's not in response to that, but Mr. Chipman's right. It applies to anything that would go into the setback, whether it's an ADU or just an addition or whatever. But yeah, no, it's not. We didn't look at that in direct response to the legislation that passed last year.
Okay, so the answer to the question is yes. I just want to be clear on it.
I thought your question was about did it have something to do with the legislation that passed? So
okay, so not but it has to do with ADUs.
It would apply to ADUs or any kind of addition that goes into the setback, right, Nora? Any part of the structure?
Any part of a structure that's located within the setback. So, right, just give you a little bit of history very quickly. Prior to 1961, all the setbacks, side setbacks through every residential district were 10 feet. In 1961, voters decided to impose different side setbacks based on the districts. So single residence C, for instance, has a 20-foot side setback. Single residence B has a 15-foot side setback. And I think there are some other districts, A or D, that have a 10-foot side setback. So when voters changed that in 1961, they also added this provision that said, well, this is the increased setbacks now, but we're going to say that if you wanted to go just 5 feet into that setback, as long as you kept your structure no higher than 15 feet, you could go ahead and do that. So that was from 1961, and it stayed in that exact manner until I think it was 2004, when voters decided to impose a new definition of height that relied on the average height of a building. And that is what the question came into play this year, whether that area within the setback should be measured according to absolute height of the structure as it had been since 1961, or if it should be from the time we adopted average height, if the better measurement would be the average height of that area within the setback. That was the question that brought this article to the planning board in the first place. The planning board decided it was appropriate to continue to review areas, additions to buildings within a setback according to the absolute height of 15 feet, but they also thought that it would make sense to allow a provision to give people the opportunity to apply for a special permit if they wanted to go higher than the absolute height of 15 feet up to an average height of 15 feet. So that was the reason this came into play. It applies to any addition to any building that falls within the setbacks, any residential building. So whether that is for a an accessory apartment or a family room addition or an expansion of a kitchen. It doesn't really matter what you're expanding the building to do. If it's an expansion of a building, it falls under this new section.
Does it conflict with the law that was passed?
It does not. It is fully compliant with the law that was passed. That law imposed additional setback requirements for accessory structures. I'm trying to pull that up to see exactly what it is. There was a lessening of restrictions. Let me just give me 1 minute because I don't remember off the top of my head what the new dimensions we added were. So just let me find that. So we now have additional requirements for accessory dwelling units that are separate from the general requirements for the restrictions on an addition to a house. If you have an accessory dwelling unit that is now a standalone dwelling unit, your side setbacks, there's a section in our bylaw, if you want to look it up, section 5.2.14. Your side setbacks are considered in that new section of the bylaw, and they are the same as the side setbacks for the principal building, and they contain the same footnote 5 or 7. So it applies equally to an accessory apartment, that accessory dwelling unit that's within the setback, or a principal dwelling unit within the setback. So if you want it, we're not making any changes to that section.
How does that pertain to like, so what about a detached unit?
It applies
Right.
exactly the same way. So that the section I just quoted, section 5.2.14, says that if you're creating an accessory dwelling unit, if it's a detached accessory dwelling unit, the side setback requirements in a single residence A are 15 feet, single residence B, 15 feet, single residence C, 20 feet, single residence D, 15 feet, single residence E, 20 feet. But then the setback, the note, either note 5 or 7, depending on what district you're in, still applies. That says, say it's a 20-foot setback, you're required to have a 20-foot setback, but if you keep your building under 15 feet in height, you can go closer. Instead of a 20-foot setback, you can go to 15 feet. So it's keeping the same requirement that we have currently for an accessory structure, for a principal structure. Anything that falls within the setback is treated in the same way. So it doesn't change the way it's currently being treated, except that it now allows an opportunity to apply for a special permit rather than a variance if you want the height to be higher than 15 feet. So it's giving you greater opportunity to build either an addition to a principal structure or an addition to an accessory dwelling unit within the setback.
Okay, thank you.
Ellen, did you want to close out your meetings? Since we're-
Yes, if there's no further questions from Finance Commission or the public, I believe we need to continue our public hearing and then adjourn. Do we have a motion for that, Nora? Or should we make one up?
Elijah, do you have a motion?
We do not have a motion. I would suggest making the motion to the
Adjourn to what
March
date?
March
March
10th.
March 10th.
at 7 p.m. with a but via Zoom with the link to be posted on the town webpage.
I move to continue the meeting, to adjourn for this evening and to continue the meeting to March 10, was it?
March 10th
Yeah.
March 10 with for
at 7 p.m.
at 7 p.m. By remote means, which will be posted on the town's website.
Second.
Just quick point of order. Can we do that as a combined motion, Nora? Is that acceptable? Continuation and adjournment all in one?
No, it should be a separate you first motion to continue your hearing, and then you can motion to adjourn your meeting.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to amend your motion.
I'm going to amend this to motion to only continue, not to adjourn.
Thank you.
Maureen, you have to second my
Oh,
amendment.
second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll take roll call. Phil?
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Vote aye as well. That motion carries and our hearing is continued to March 10th. I now would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on adjournment? Seeing none, I'll take roll call. Tim?
Aye.
Phil?
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Vote aye as well. We are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you all. for
Thank
your
you,
time.
everyone. Thank you
Thank
for all your
you.
feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you. I
We
appreciate it.
appreciate
Good
the
night.
feedback. Good night.
Good night.
All right. Connor, Molly, Stephanie.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello, Connor.
So, Bill, I believe we have a rather high-level agenda item here for town meeting warrant article updates.
Yep.
As far as select board warrant articles, nothing new tonight to present. I did want to just follow up with some of the member questions from a couple of weeks back, particularly relating to the wetland donation and the associated article for the acceptance of that. There was some conversation and question around what the marginal tax value or the opportunity loss would be there of the town accepting that land. Finance department and specifically the assessors took a look at that. It's quite negligible. It would likely be under $200 per year of an impact. That's because it's a rather small piece of land that already, by virtue of being wet, is not truly developable. So there really wouldn't be any kind of material or substantive revenue impact for the town to be concerned about.
Thanks for following up on that.
And then I'll just chime in that the FS1 steering committee, what day, it's the snow days are blurring together. Yesterday on Monday, voted to recommend that the select board move forward a warrant article for feasibility for three preferred sites. Because of the snow, we had to move the select board meeting until tomorrow, so I really can't talk too much about that. But just to say that a number of miscellaneous articles had been reserved, trying to figure out what we were going to do with FS1, and with the recommendation to move forward with feasibility would be one article. We anticipate eliminating a number of miscellaneous articles after that is recommended.
Thank you. So there'll be an update by our March 10th meeting on those.
Yes, and I'm happy to send an email to Allison to share with the group on Thursday of just a summary of what the select board does tomorrow night, just so you have that in advance. But we will have more information on those articles on the 10th.
Perfect. Thank you.
Quick, I guess, Article 3 related, since that's the operating budget. When I was in front of you, February 11th, I believe it was, I had given a detailed overview of where we were with the budget. And part of that was that the schools at that time had a 4.3% increase with a note next to it that that was still subject to change and that they hadn't officially voted on it yet. So the school committee did meet last night and voted their budget of 4.9%. So that's just an increase of about 352,000 over what I had been presenting at my at the meeting on the 11th. So just wanted to update you on that. And as Molly just said, we were supposed to meet with the select board last night, and I was going to go through the details of that. I'm just here tonight to kind of give a brief overview with that update, and then the proposed way to balance the budget at this time is for the projected revenue on the local receipts to increase now for a total of about $400,000. And I know I've done this in the past. I usually send a memo, as Molly just said. I send a budget memo to FinCom in between now and the March 10th and March public hearing with updates as we go along. So I'll definitely do that. Then also be back in front of you on March 10th with a more detailed overview of that budget.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephanie, for the update. Any questions from FinCom members? I see none. So I think what we can do is just see if there's any other public comments. I'll give a second. I don't see any hands raised. So I think we should be good there. So yeah, that should cover the warrant articles. Thanks to the three of you for coming and waiting to give us that update. I should have put you first on the agenda. My apologies.
Okay, planning in many communities ends up going very late and last, so I'm happy for the team that they got to have their moment to shine.
Prime time, planning board and prime time.
And Connor's had such an easy run of it so far, so make him stay the whole time.
And it is past midnight somewhere in the world.
Very true. So the meeting minutes from our last meeting, I know those were sent out, so I'll entertain a motion relative to those.
I move to approve the minutes from planning board, not the planning board, the Finance and Warrant Commission meeting of February the 11th.
In a second.
Second.
And then we have to do a roll call because we're virtual.
I'm here. Bill Bruce.
Yes.
Mike Gay.
I abstain.
Mm-hmm. Alex Yale.
Yes.
Angela Hughes.
Yes.
Chris Marks.
I abstain.
Chris Pareda.
Yes.
George Laham had to leave early. Margaret Driscoll.
Yes.
Mike Powers.
Yes.
Paul Bamford.
Yes.
Paula McLaughlin.
I abstain.
Thank you. Seth Fredrickson.
Abstain.
And Susan Flanagan Cahill.
Yes.
Also.
All right. Just some quick other business in terms of the warrant article write-ups and stuff. Just to explain the process a little bit for folks, especially those that are newer to it. And then Allison, if you pull up that list for me too, I'll just talk briefly about that. I'm not gonna walk through one by one. But as I said, our next meeting on the 10th will be where the department heads are there to answer questions. We're going to submit them all ahead of time to them so that we can kind of keep it organized and go section by section through the questions. Allison and I'll consolidate similar questions to ask, and then you'll still have the opportunity there that day to ask anything additional that comes up. So there won't be any report outs because we don't have the committees. But then there will be the article write-up. So our March 25th meeting is our public hearing meeting, and then where we go into deliberations and vote on each of the articles. So after that, then we have to do a write-up on every article, and that write-up goes in the book. So for folks that have done the write-ups before, I think you know what it entails. Usually look at prior year books for similar type articles to get a sense of some of the verbiage used. But what you try to do is we obviously have the count for the vote, and then you capture the spirit of the discussion. And when we have articles that are unanimous, it's easy, you just capture that discussion. When there's more of an even, let's say 8-7 or 10-5, Mike or I will determine, there's enough people where there should be a minority opinion too as part of that as well. So then the write-up may contain a majority and a minority opinion that the person kind of pulls together into one write-up. And so once the write-ups are complete, you send them over to Allison and Mike and I, and we obviously review them, and then Allison pulls it all together into the book, that big thick book that goes out to everyone around town. So what I did this year, to streamline things a little, um, is I assigned articles. So I took all the articles we have. I tried to balance out so that everybody has around two or three articles to do. If you're newer, I tried to give you some of the, articles that are a little more straightforward that we've had before. Um, but Allison will send this out to everyone and we can post it on the OneDrive too, because you can see there's a list of like 12 miscellaneous articles. So those are blank right now. Depending on how many we have there, we'll just have to discuss who wants to take those. But I tried to spread things out to give people some different planning articles, select board articles. Um, so Allison will post this along with the more detailed listing of the articles we have in Word that describes what each one is. And then once we get to the final list, she'll circulate it before the 25th so that when you go into that meeting on the 25th, okay, this is the article I'm gonna be writing up. So let me make sure I'm jotting down notes about, what we're discussing as part of that dialogue. Mike, would you add anything
Nope.
anything
I
else
think
you want to
that's
walk through? Did I cover it all pretty good?
yeah, you covered it all. And then if any of you have an issue with the article that you were assigned, um, we would ask that you reach out to a friend, and if you need to make any changes, you let us know. We don't want to be the kind of the keeper of the Jenga game of the articles. So, and again, if you need help, we're happy to help you, as will other members of FinCom if you're new and you're overwhelmed. One of the things I like to do is to again take a look at previous warrant books, and a lot of these that are similar, you can effectively frame out the write up, and then you can again tweak it as you go. Makes it a whole lot easier.
As riveting as the previous books are, I don't keep them. So where would I
They're
find?
all on the OneDrive.
On the OneDrive.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I
that
think
is such a huge thing that Allison has put together, is that we have an archive. It's all there.
Yeah,
You can
perfect.
look. It's really, really helpful.
And then Allison, I don't have it in front of me, but can you remind me of the dates or remind everyone of the dates when they need to have, so our meeting's on the 25th, and then when do they need to submit the articles back
Can
to
I
us?
stop sharing my screen so I can just
Yes.
pull it up?
You sure
Thank
can.
you.
Yes, we're good. We'll send this out to everyone.
I accept the challenge of writing up budget 12.
Okay. So our next date is Sunday, March 1st. That's when questions are due. Then to me for any of the department heads, and then we will distribute them. Our next meeting is Tuesday, March 10th. Hopefully in person at the library. We'll have the schools presenting final budgets, and the questions that you send to me will hopefully be answered at that meeting. Then we have our second public hearing on Wednesday, March 25th, hopefully in person, and the warrant article write-ups will be due to me on Thursday, April 2nd, which is the Thursday before Easter.
So it's about a week from a little more than a week from the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you get them done, send them over.
Yes, earlier the better, please.
Yeah, and again, we're here to help. The meetings are all going to be televised by Westwood Media Center. They will be available for viewing later. So as you're engaged, you're taking notes in the deliberations, the conversation. That's great, but you always have a reference to go back to.
Thank you, Allison. And this was all in an email she sent. I know some people are having issues with the town email, but it'll all be, we're putting everything out in the OneDrive too, so that you have it.
And I sent calendar invites for everything.
Thank you, Allison.
You're welcome.
All right. So our next 2 meetings will be in person, unless there's another, blizzard. But hopefully not. But with that, unless anybody has anything else, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Second.
And then Allison, just roll call through it.
Bill Bruce,
Yes.
Mike Gay,
Yes.
Alex Yale,
Yes.
Angela Hughes,
Yes.
Chris Marks,
Yes.
Chris Pareda,
Yes.
Margaret Driscoll,
Yes.
Mike Powers,
Yes.
Paul Bamford,
Yes.
Paula McLaughlin,
Yes.
Seth Frederickson,
Yes.
Susan Flanagan Cahill.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Appreciate all the questions and engagement, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.